Armstrong's bizarre jungle quest for an ancient alien library.
Did something happen on the lunar surface to inspire this mission?
It's been reported that Armstrong and Aldrin saw lights on the edge of the crater.
And NASA's nightmare. A genius rocket scientist seems to open a gate to another world.
Did Parsons really succeed in getting the attention of other dimensional beings?
UFOs, once the stuff of fantasy, now caught on camera, finally forcing governments to reveal what they know.
UAPs are unexplained, but they are real.
Many of these phenomena have been cited in training ranges. We're very much concerned about safety of flight.
So let's just speculate for one moment that these things, whatever they are here to do not very good things.
Impossible engineering, terrifying encounters, sinister cover-ups. This is evidence of the unexplained. May 2021. It's a calm, almost windless day on Jangkar Beach in East Indonesia, when something huge appears in the sky, startling hundreds of beachgoers.
This is a weird-looking object.
If there's no wind, it's traveling under its own propulsion.
What this black blob then seems to do is descends towards the water and then just vanishes into the ocean.
There is no sound and no sign of heavy impact. The object appears to simply glide into the water without losing any speed. Objects that can move from the air and then through the water at the same speed have been tracked by military equipment in the past.
In 2019, a leaked U.S. Navy video from the USS Omaha seems to show a mysterious craft hovering before it disappears into the ocean off the coast of San Diego in California. The object was apparently tracked as it dived from a very, very high altitude, 100,000 feet. It was still traveling at a very, very high speed as it entered the water.
What was that? Splash. We got a splash.
There were claims that it was tracked traveling at about 300 knots underwater. That's about 345 miles an hour. That's 10 times faster than the Royal Navy's nuclear-powered subs. The US Navy actually sent a submarine to the area to investigate, but they can't find any trace of any object.
It was as if it had vanished into thin air.
Objects like this one, filmed in 2019, and the one witnessed on Jangkar Beach, seem to have what the Pentagon describes as transmedium capabilities.
Transmediumness is the ability to travel through air and water without loss of performance or capability. Normally when you travel, let's say, from air to water, you will experience some form of resistance. Effectively, the water will slow you down. Even light itself is slowed down when it travels through water.
Water is just under 800 times thicker than air. So to move through it, you need enormous amounts of fuel and power.
The next time you're out in your F-16 fighter jet, just try flying that underwater. You know, it's going to break up the moment you hit the ocean surface.
In 2004, of course, we have the world-famous Nimitz incident. US Navy pilots spot what seems to be a tic-tac-shaped object hovering above a disturbance in the water.
The disturbance is described as being caused by a large, cross-shaped object just beneath the surface.
In that same instant, a radar operator on the nearby ship, the USS Princeton, confirmed that a craft was actually in the water, moving faster than 70 knots.
Military analysts have come to call these things unidentified submerged objects, or USOs.
A USO is described very much like a UFO. These are objects that are performing in a way that we frankly can't replicate, and they're doing it underwater.
One of the first modern-day sightings of a USO was by Japanese fishermen in 1957. Since then, USOs have been clocked numerous times, often moving at incredible speeds.
Some of these objects have been clocked at the speed of sound, underwater. That's way beyond our tech.
The former head of the French Secret Service claimed that they had picked up one of these objects traveling underwater at faster than the speed of sound.
The speed of sound in water is over 3,000 miles per hour.
We're seeing a vehicle that can operate very, very fast underwater, in instantaneous acceleration, potentially hypersonic velocities.
It does make you wonder, how can this be achieved?
If this craft was real, it could circumnavigate the entire globe underwater in just 8 hours. The world's superpowers spend hundreds of billions annually on black projects, funding secret, highly advanced aircraft. It's not a stretch to believe they're funding secret underwater technology too.
There have been rumors, though, that both the US and China are developing new supersonic submarines using a technology called supercavitation. This is where a submerged vessel effectively travels inside an air bubble, eliminating the water drag.
Bubbles, by definition, experience far less resistance in water than the object itself. So if you can create the bubbles, let's say at the nose of the object, so that the bubbles then surround the object, then that object should be able to move faster.
The reports of US pilot witnesses indicate that these craft have no obvious means for propulsion.
If you have a jet sucking in air through its engines and pushing it out the back, or even a submarine propeller pushing against the water, that is an obvious form of propulsion.
Some theorize that these craft are somehow manipulating the gravity fields to move. If that's true, it doesn't matter in what medium they travel in. Air, water, it's all the same.
Even if there was a top-secret program that had developed supersonic submarines, you have to remember the transmedium qualities of these USOs, their ability to both fly and travel through water.
Our oceans cover 70% of the entire surface of the Earth, and 80% of these waters have never been scanned, explored, or seen by human eyes.
To put that in context, we know more about the surface of the Moon or Mars.
It is likely to mean there are things we don't know about that live in the ocean.
The Greek philosopher Plato told of an ancient civilization called Atlantis that now lies beneath the ocean. Later, scholars and archaeologists theorized the story could be a memory of a society that inhabited, or perhaps still inhabits, an undersea realm.
Maybe we're cohabitating with something else on this planet. Maybe we're dealing with something that's even far older than our own species. Is that possible?
Gary Hesseltine, a former police officer and now the vice president of the International Coalition for Extraterrestrial Research, believes that there are underwater alien bases hidden in our deepest oceans and trenches.
In May 2022, there was a congressional hearing into UAPs, the first such hearing for 50 years. Now, Representative Raja Krishnamurthy asked the entirely legitimate question:
do we have any sensors underwater to detect on submerged UAPs, anything that is in the ocean or in the seas?
In response, the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security made a rather terse comment.
So I think that would be more appropriately addressed in closed session.
Okay.
He wasn't going to answer that question in the public glare with the cameras rolling. So what exactly does he have to hide?
When we're talking about USOs in particular, I think it's important that we remain open-minded. Just because we can't imagine living at the crushing depth of the ocean doesn't mean something else can't. We're just now recognizing the reality of what this is to begin with.
August 1993, Melbourne, Eastern Australia. Kelly Carhill and her husband are driving to visit some friends. The events that are about to unfold, if true, make this an encounter so extraordinary that 30 years later, it's been dubbed the Holy Grail of abductions.
The only reason that I went public in the first place is no one's game to come forward simply because they've got no evidence, and here you are sitting there with all of this physical evidence, with other witnesses, something no one else has. Yeah. People are starting to realise, hey, there is something going on here.
The original story is that Kelly is driving along in a suburb about 20 miles from the centre of Melbourne. She's on the Belgrove Hallam Road on the way to Montauk in the Dandenong Mountains to see a girlfriend. And it's about dusk, so the light is getting dimmer, and she sees what looks like orange lights in a field.
Hours later, the couple return along the same road.
Driving home later, they see an object about 1 kilometer in front of them, and it seems to be sort of hovering at about twice the height of the trees. Now, Kelly says she originally thought that it was some kind of airship or balloon or a blimp, but as she looked at it, she saw that it was almost made out of light. And as they got closer, the light divided into distinct orbs.
In the lights, Kelly could see silhouettes like people, like the outlines of people. She turned to her husband to point this out, but as she did, the object just shot past them.
They kept driving, and about 1 kilometre or 2 down the road, they came across what Kelly described as a screen, or a wall of light across the road.
When she gets home, Kelly makes a puzzling discovery.
Following the encounter, Kelly discovered that she had what looked like an equilateral triangle below her navel. Now, it intrigued her that this was such an accurate geometric shape, and also that it looked like a burn, and yet she had experienced no sensation at the time.
A strange series of events, but this was just the beginning.
Weeks later, Kelly remembered getting out of the car that night. She remembered that there was another car, too, that had pulled up about 100 meters away from them on the road.
And the people in that car, and Kelly and her husband, started to walk across the field. Kelly and the people from the other car just looked at what was apparently a huge craft, and she was totally awestruck.
Kelly said that even though it was, in her words, science fiction come to life, she and her husband weren't afraid. Yet. As they stood there, a tall, dark figure appeared in front of the craft.
This being was joined by 7 or 8 others who appeared behind it. And then Kelly says that she felt this incredible energy that was like a low-level frequency that was pulsating through her in waves. She says it was so dense that she could physically feel it going through her body.
Kelly recalls feeling this overwhelming sense of horror. She says she began screaming, and as she did, the eyes on the beings lit up.
The beings came charging across the field. They split into 2 groups. One veered away from Kelly, the other came directly towards her.
Kelly says when they got to her, she felt a blow to the pit of her stomach that felled her to the ground, and she thought she was going to die.
Kelly said that she was convinced that if she didn't get up now, she never would. But when she opened her eyes, it was all black. She couldn't see a thing.
A survey in 2002 found thousands of people firmly believe they've come into contact with extraterrestrial craft or beings. But most of these encounters are relayed by a single witness with no independent corroboration. This case was different.
Now, this is an incredible account, but Kelly isn't the only one that said she saw what she reports that night. For the first time ever, we have independent eyewitnesses saying they saw the same thing.
3 witnesses using the names Glenda, Jane, and Bill to protect their identities had also been driving in the area that evening. Each were asked to draw what they saw.
Now, Kelly, seeing the sketches that they drew after the incident, they're almost identical to her own.
The sketches that Kelly and the other witnesses drew entirely independently featured a circle of lights at the top of the craft and lines coming down that formed a kind of semicircle on the ground.
They were also able to draw the beings that Kelly remembered. But the similarities didn't end there.
They all share the same mark under their belly button, but two of the other women, Glenda and Jane, had 3 small dots on their inner thigh as well. Glenda also has quite a severe ligature mark around her ankle.
Not only are there the marks on the witnesses, but UFO researchers also found physical traces at the site itself. They find a triangular formation of 3 points, 6 meters apart, in the location where the women say the craft landed. These correspond with the tripod sketches that the women made.
Kelly's case is compelling. We have all the witnesses corroborating the same story and their sketches very similar. Why is that? A team from the Paranormal Research Association even interviews her. They interview all the witnesses. They look at their medical records.
But this case is as frustrating as it is extraordinary.
The report that's promised from the association is never forthcoming. We don't hear anything more about this story. So what's going on here?
Kelly spoke to the media about her experience and later wrote a book about it.
I do believe that there is covert military activity going on. There's just too many secret documents, too many top secret documents that aren't allowed to be released from the States on the UFO topic.
Yeah.
And if they don't exist, well, why not release the whole goddamn lot?
Phenomena Research Australia say the reason they haven't released the report is because witnesses didn't want their medical and psychological reports included. And doubt has been sown over Kelly's recollection of the events.
I've had this problem of the skeptics following me around. A particular Victorian skeptic called me a disorganised, neurotic woman.
When Kelly last spoke, she couldn't remember exactly what happened that night. But the one thing that she does remember is the fear.
The fact that her body was being flooded with terror hormones could have impacted the way her memories were formed.
Memory is a generative process of editing. It takes into account what we know now, what we felt then, what we feel now. Every time we pull up a memory, it shapes it, and it turns it into something different. Research has demonstrated that it is incredibly easy to implant false memories, and those memories feel very, very real.
And it should be noted that the other witnesses who came forward after Kelly saw an ad asking for people who had potentially been abducted by aliens. This is suggestion on a grand scale. People have investigated why people could be so invested in the alien abduction stories that are part of their lives. For example, Professor Andrew Abata of Rutgers University, he's a psychologist, has suggested that it's akin to a religious experience, that it gives life meaning, it puts somebody at the centre of a narrative, makes them important.
Researchers are asking for Phenomena Research Australia's secret report to be published. Its findings could corroborate that Carhill's story is all a cocktail of mistakes and misunderstandings. Or it may be a holy grail that leaves a bitter taste. Confirmation that we are prey to an advanced intelligence that scoops us up and subjects us to degrading torture at will.
Whatever you believe about Kelly Cahill's story in particular, whether or not Kelly was actually abducted by aliens, we just need to know more. Perhaps there was something else happening that day that bears further investigation.
July 20th, 1969. Apollo 11's lunar module, the Eagle, lands on the moon.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
The moon mission, of course, is one of mankind's greatest achievements.
Astronaut Neil Armstrong makes history.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Fast forward to 1976, and Armstrong is on another dangerous mission. Armstrong, along with Scottish engineer Stan Hall and a 100-strong team, heads off on a quest to find a massive cave system deep in the jungles of Ecuador in South America. The tunnels are said to be home to an incredible treasure, an ancient library of metal books, which Armstrong and his fellow explorers hope to find.
This library is claimed to have metal books, all etched in an alien language, recording 250,000 years of history.
It's an incredible story. The Ecuadorian cave system is known as Cueva de los Teos, and it's said to be guarded by an ancient tribe who have pledged to protect these artifacts at all costs.
The Shuars, they're very tough people. They have never been conquered either by the Incas or by the conquistadores. They got a reputation as fierce warriors of the forest.
A major in the Ecuadorian army, Petronio Jaramillo, claimed that when he was 17 years old, back in 1946, he actually entered the library.
What Jaramillo says he saw is incredible, frankly. He says he saw these thousands of large metal books stacked on shelves, each weighing about 20 kilograms. And according to him, each page was impressed with ideographs, which are kind of geometric designs with written inscriptions.
Why didn't he bring some treasure out? It was physically extremely difficult to get in there. He had to dive underwater, go in this underwater tunnel and then come up. And to carry any kind of heavy weight there was impossible.
I mean, you have to ask yourself, why would the world's foremost astronaut choose to get involved in something like this?
Did something happen on the lunar surface to inspire this mission?
Neil Armstrong and his fellow astronaut Buzz Aldrin spent 21 hours and 36 minutes on the moon when they landed in 1969. Official history says they planted a flag, collected rock samples, and spoke to the president. But rumors have persisted that their trip was more eventful than the authorized account reveals.
NASA insiders have talked about a cover-up of what the astronauts actually saw while they were on the moon.
It's been reported that Armstrong and Aldrin saw lights on the edge of the crater, and they reportedly radioed in.
They're here, they're parked on the side of the crater, they're watching us.
The feedback to Earth went dead for 2 minutes.
NASA insists that actually the 2-minute gap was simply due to a camera overheating and interfering with transmission.
How could a simple malfunction interfere with such an important mission?
There are multiple cameras filming from different locations, different angles, so the loss of one camera shouldn't mean a loss of the entire feed.
Buzz Aldrin went on record to say that he'd actually seen a UFO as the astronauts were returning to Earth. Now, he later retracted that statement and said that what he'd actually seen was a panel that was ejected from his own spacecraft. There are other reports that NASA erased 40 rolls of film from the Apollo mission.
Was NASA, in effect, hiding clear evidence of an extraterrestrial presence on the moon to avoid a mass panic on Earth?
Whatever occurred on the moon's surface, Armstrong returns as one of the most famous men in the world. And in 1976, he lends his name to an extraordinary expedition.
Neil knows something about geology, he'd been to the moon. I thought, well, why don't we ask Neil Armstrong to be the titular head of the expedition? And of course they laughed and said, Neil Armstrong? There's no way that you're going to get Neil Armstrong. Neil sent a letter saying that he considered it not a favour but an honour to accept the position.
This was one of the largest and most costly caving expeditions ever undertaken.
The quality of all the scientists and participants was extremely high, so Neil Armstrong was really in good company.
The aim of the mission is to survey and map the underground cave system at Cueva de los Teos.
The library buried deep in the cave was said to hold knowledge dating back 250,000 years, far older than human history.
The metal library, if it exists, could make us totally rethink what we know about the origins of humankind, as well as about the potential for extraterrestrial civilizations.
Finding this library could indeed be proof that extraterrestrials had indeed visited Earth.
But before they could get to the library, Armstrong and his team first had to get through terrain almost as challenging as the lunar surface.
There's the thick jungle to contend with, the venomous creatures, not to mention the risks of navigating an uncharted subterranean cave system.
Neil Armstrong got no privileges of any kind, nor did he want any. He simply stepped forward and then stepped straight onto this 6-inch wide ladder and began to climb down to the very furthest, deepest part of the cave.
Hall, Armstrong and the whole team, they actually make their way into the cave. And they're just going through these chambers, which are like the size of cathedrals. I mean, they're completely awestruck. It's like going onto another world.
In the depths of these caves, they find this seated skeleton.
The skeleton was positioned so that on a summer solstice, rays of sunlight would pierce the chamber.
It does appear that, whatever civilization created that chamber and put that skeleton there may well have had a fairly strong degree of astronomical knowledge.
The 100-strong team spend more than a month searching the whole cave system. But there is no sign of the library described in such detail by Jaramillo.
Eventually, they're forced to turn back.
Neil Armstrong returns to America, but Stan Hall refuses to accept defeat.
Stan Hall is not a man to give up, and he continues with his quest. And in 1991, Hall actually manages to track down Petronio Jaramillo, the one man who claims to know its exact location.
His very first words to me on the telephone were, "Well, Mr. Hall, after 16 years, finally we meet."
Jaramillo agrees to show Hall the caves. But in 1995, war breaks out on the border between Ecuador and Peru, and Hall has to return to Britain. Shortly afterwards, Hall receives devastating news.
Plans for a joint expedition were abandoned in 1998 when news came through that Jaramillo had been killed. Did he take the secret of the metal library to his grave?
Armstrong rarely discussed the expedition to the caves and would not be drawn on the subject of aliens, UFOs, or what happened during those supposed 2 minutes of lost time up on the lunar surface.
He retreated from the media spotlight, but in 1994, he delivered this cryptic message.
There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief.
What did he mean by truth's protective layers?
I mean, the cosmos is billions of years old, and there may even be civilizations out there, life out there, billions of years ahead of us.
No wonder these tales of ancient astronauts and messages from extraterrestrials really fascinated this most famous of space travelers.
January 31st, 2022, in the ancient Welsh town of Milford Haven, a series of strange events begin with the sighting of a weird object just off the coast.
A 93-year-old woman reports that she's seen some kind of craft, which she describes as round, huge, and shimmering.
She says that this object emerged from the water. It hovered over the bay and then shot off into the sky. A few days later, another local resident, Isabella Cooper, says that she also saw an object matching the same description, and she just manages to catch an image of it on her camera before it shoots away.
She says she witnessed a bright blue spherical object hovering a few hundred meters above the Milford Haven estuary.
All these reports are ignored, they're written off as cranks, but only at first, because then some seriously strange things start to happen.
People living by the seafront wake up to an extraordinary sight. Across the beach, they see hundreds of thousands of dead starfish.
Local people say they've never seen anything like this before.
Is there something in the water?
A local woman comes across another scene of mass slaughter as she's driving into Milford Haven late at night.
This time, it's death from the skies.
Starlings, thousands of them, spread across the road.
Just before this happened, people in the town reported seeing a bright flash of light and hearing a loud bang.
Now, you might think that was thunder and lightning, but apparently it was something quite different.
One onlooker describes how they'd left work and heard a bang, and then suddenly dead birds started falling on their car.
More and more reports started coming in from other people who had seen these birds dropping. Police had called to the scene and were collecting 10 bin bags full of dead starlings.
What is the connection between these deaths and the object in the sky?
What makes the events in Milford Haven all the more strange is that this sleepy Welsh town has been menaced by UFOs before.
It's on February the 4th, 1977, and you have 14 pupils from a primary school called Broadhaven who all claim to have seen a UFO fly over in the field next to their school.
The disbelieving head teacher separated the pupils and asked them each individually to draw what they'd seen. People were struck by the resemblance between the pictures that were produced.
On the same day, there were children in the nearby village of Hubberston who saw another strange object over their school.
Now, Hubberston is only 10 minutes away from Milford Haven, so could it have been the same object? A short while later, Rosa Granville, who runs the Haven Fort Hotel, wakes up in the middle of the night and reports seeing an upside-down saucer. Granville spoke about the light and heat coming off the craft, and she reported that it burned her face.
Rosa Granville reports seeing two faceless creatures that looked almost humanoid.
She ran to get others to show it to them, but by the time she got back, they had disappeared.
Rosa Granville and her band of would-be witnesses, they go to the place where she had seen the object.
And strangely enough, they found scorched grass 2 inches deep. Disturbed, Rosa wrote her local MP, who promptly got the Ministry of Defense to come and investigate. An RAF officer visited Rosa and went to examine the scene, but left as mystified as he had arrived.
But then the visitation stopped as mysteriously as they had started.
Fast forward to 2022, and once again we have sightings of strange objects over Milford Haven. But now the mystery deepens a bit because we have these dead sea creatures and dead birds in the equation as well.
Surely there's got to be a human or logical explanation. The location of these sightings around Milford Haven may well provide some answers, because actually this place is not as quiet as it looks.
Milford Haven's geography makes it very desirable from a military perspective. It's on an estuary, which helps form a natural protective harbor.
Now, Milford Haven was used in wars with the Vikings, the Normans, the Tudor Wars. It was buzzing with military activity during the First and Second World Wars.
American military engineers actually built their largest advanced amphibious base here, and it was absolutely crucial in the run-up to the D-Day landings.
Today, Milford Haven Port has another strategically important asset. There's a huge oil and gas terminal here. It's the largest liquid natural gas terminal in Europe and can supply up to a quarter of the UK's gas requirement.
It's also the main gateway into Britain for fuel supplies from the rest of the world.
With all this infrastructure, it's clear that you're going to need a lot of security, so some of these supposedly mysterious flying objects could actually be something to do with protecting Milford Haven as a vital national asset.
But the recent reported sightings came from local people who would have been used to the normal comings and goings in the area. And they were accompanied by these mass deaths of wildlife at sea and on land. In the natural world, mass die-offs are rare, but not unheard of.
And the cause of this, when it happens in nature, is said to be a traumatic weather event.
Did a storm cause the death of all these sea creatures? Well, it's a plausible explanation, except that there were no storms reported in the region at the time.
what about the birds?
Now, that day, there was a bang, whatever the cause of it, in the sky.
In theory, this could have disorientated the birds, and unable to tell in which direction they are flying, they flew just straight into the ground.
But this doesn't really tally with the reports of local observers who say that the birds were dropping out of the sky already dead and that they continued to do so for some time. And what caused this bang in the sky is still unknown.
Police in Wales recently released a remarkable piece of film showing an unidentified flying object. It was picked up in 2016 on the force's thermal imaging cameras, but was totally invisible to the naked eye. Perhaps these craft have been operating unseen over West Wales for 50 years. If this is the case, why they are sporadically showing themselves is an intriguing question.
So the mystery remains unresolved. There's still no explanation of these alleged strange sightings of aircrafts and mass die-offs.
Certain places in the world have earned the term UFO hotspot, a place where so-called UFO activity seems to occur over years or even decades. Milford Haven has no doubt joined those ranks. But locals and wildlife lovers alike want to know, what is it about their town that draws these strange forces? And what might be coming next? UFOs, often seen in the skies, are long presumed to come from outer space. But perhaps the truth is far more unnerving.
We have to be very careful and temper ourselves when we start talking about the reality. Are these things real? Are these things from outer space? They could be. Are they from inner space or the space in between? I was giving a briefing to a general about this topic. And about halfway through the briefing, the general said, "Look, Lou, I just need to know at the end of the day, if I see one of these things, do I extend my hand out and handshake and offer to shake its hand, or do I point an M16 at its head?" And the answer is neither. It's just far more complex than that.
Incredibly, some analysts have theorized that the occupants of UFOs are actually demonic entities visiting us from a parallel dimension.
Theoretical physicist Dr. Fred Alan Wolf thinks that something like a spirit world is encoded in a quantum state, a parallel dimension that intersects with our own.
To better understand what this means, we need to go back to the early days of NASA and the US Air Force and take a look at one of the most revolutionary scientists at the time.
Jack Parsons was a brilliant American rocket engineer and chemist. He's considered by some to be the founding father of rocket science.
In 1934, at the age of only 20, Jack Parsons and his Caltech graduate friends formed the Rocket Research Group. Just 5 years later, they would become the first government-funded rocket research organization in American history.
The group created the Jet-Assisted Takeoff Engine, or JATO, for the US Army. Parsons also developed a rocket fuel that was stable enough to be stored indefinitely, a hugely significant development. The fuel was a total game changer. It would become the basis for the Minuteman missile, the Titan rocket, and eventually the Space Shuttle boosters.
Parsons also helped found the hugely important NASA-owned Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California.
So far, so standard for a top American scientist. But Parsons wasn't a normal guy in a lab coat. He was fascinated by the seemingly spooky qualities of quantum mechanics.
Quantum theory is rock-solid science, but for some it also has magical properties. A particle does not have to be here or there, it can be here and there at the same time. To this day, there is still no comprehensive theory of everything. Both Einstein's theory of relativity and quantum mechanics are accepted explanations of how different parts of the universe works. But the theories aren't actually compatible, and no one knows how to make them so.
For Parsons, space exploration, quantum mechanics, and black magic were just sides of the same coin. They were all previously thought of as impossible, mad. But Parsons was turning one into a reality, and he was going to do the same for the others.
In 1949, Parsons wrote, "It has seemed to me that if I had the genius to found the jet propulsion field in the U.S., found a multi-million-dollar corporation and a world-renowned research laboratory, then I should also be able to apply this genius to the magical field."
To achieve his bizarre goal of trying to unite the physical and the metaphysical world into an ultimate theory of everything, Parsons got in contact with a man known as the Great Beast, a British Satanist called Aleister Crowley. Crowley inducted him into a group that claimed to conjure and communicate with demons.
He was part of the secret society known as the Ordo Templi Orientis. They were practitioners of the Thelemite occult. They believe that humans are made of the same thing as stars. Considering the Big Bang Theory didn't exist until the 1920s or 30s, that's pretty interesting.
Crowley told Parsons that at the height of World War I, he developed a magical ritual that ripped open a gateway in reality.
According to Crowley, the ritual would summon weird lights followed by a creature called Lamb. A sketch made of this entity looks uncannily like a classic grey alien.
In the spring of 1946, Parsons said he took Crowley's knowledge and performed a similar ritual, opening a portal or rip between dimensions using a combination of ancient magic and his knowledge of quantum physics.
Parsons actually wanted to reproduce with whatever creature came. He wanted to father a new kind of being, a moon child.
What the ritual entailed is not entirely clear, but Parsons claims it was a success. Just 1 year later, in 1947, the world's first ever UFO sighting was reported.
June the 24th, 1947. At 3 p.m., pilot Kenneth Arnold reports 9 mysterious objects moving at over 1,200 miles per hour over Mount Rainier in Washington State, USA. The modern UFO era is born.
The story was huge. The nation's first UFO report.
Private pilot Kenneth Arnold sighted 9 saucer-like things. He estimated the speed of the saucers at 1,200 miles per hour.
For some, the question is, did Parsons really succeed in getting the attention of other dimensional beings?
At the end of the Second World War, the US Air Force has over 63,000 active aircraft. If any arm of the military is likely to encounter UFOs, it's these guys. In 1952, not long after these first modern-day UFO sightings, the US Air Force set up Project Blue Book, keen to get to the bottom of what UFOs might be.
Project Blue Book systematically studied over 12,000 UFO reports, but the Air Force was accused of trying to cover up incidents and discourage coming forward.
The Air Force has been accused from time to time of hiding information about UFO. What do you have to say direct on that?
Well, these charges are absolutely untrue.
There's nothing to hide.
There's nothing to hide at all.
Top Air Force personnel managed to have the Blue Book closed in 1969.
Could it be that they didn't want the world to know what they found in these reports? Perhaps Parsons indeed succeeded in satisfying his theories of quantum physics and magic to open a portal to another world.
UAPs seem to behave in ways that defy the laws of physics as we understand them.
Could this mean that these UAPs are from a different plane of existence?
Parsons may very well have believed so. However, this would never be confirmed by the man himself. Police say Parsons died tragically in a home accident while mixing explosives in a coffee can. Some of those who knew him said he was performing an occult ritual. His legacy might be both the dawn of America's space program and perhaps even the opening of a door to another dimension, and those who come through it. As we learn more about quantum theory, perhaps the truth will become clear.
I mean, there's a lot we still don't understand about the world, and theories like quantum mechanics can seem as mystical as they are scientific.
Strange flying objects are reported over Sweden's nuclear power plants. The Swedes ask themselves,
is this the return of the ghost rockets?
Close Encounters